If anyone wants to understand why U.S. policy in the Middle East is constantly in trouble, especially on the Israel-Palestinian issue, then just read the article Israel's One-State Reality, published in May 2023 in The Foreign Affairs by Michael Barnett, Nathan Brown, Marc Lynch, and Shibley, Telhami. The article also mentions that the United States launched wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya, and did not achieve the expected success. The reason may be because Washington views autocratic leaders as friends and has not treated allies properly. The authors also mentioned many opinions blaming Israel for the failure of the two-state solution. For hundreds of years, the two-state solution has been discussed by stakeholders, but until today, there has not been much progress. Why is that? Let's follow our programs to find out. Many opinions that the two-state solution failed came from both Israel and Palestine. It involves the 450,000 Israelis living outside today's internationally recognized borders in Jewish settlements, plus the rise of many right-wing ideas on the Israeli political scene. However, there is another extremely important factor, is the opposition of the Palestinian people themselves. Even before the first Jewish settlement was established in 1937, the Palestinians refused to establish two separate Israeli and Palestinian states. The protest movements that followed in 2000, 2001, and 2008 were merely a reiteration of long-standing Palestinian policy. In history, Muslims have denied the Jews are one people, so Palestinian leaders have never recognized a two-state solution. According to many experts, this resistance of the Palestinians is even greater than that of Israel in the formation of two states as proposed by the United States. The Palestinians have never committed to the principle of end claims and conflict, which is integral to any peace agreement. Nor have they ever ceased to seek to destroy the Jewish character of the State of Israel, for example, through the repatriation of millions of Palestinian refugees. To date, no Palestinian leader has shown the will and determination to reconcile with the Jewish state. The truth is that no one can stay in power if they do that. The Palestinians have also given no indication that they want to build a transparent, stable, democratic institution towards a modern state. They remained committed to a secular government based on the Charter of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO. Realizing these facts, many Israeli leftists conclude that the Palestinians never really wanted a two-state solution. They just want to dissolve the state of Israel. The 1990 referendum showed that the majority of Israelis supported this two-state solution. Today, very few supporters for that. Israel's withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000 and Gaza in 2005 in hopes of peace yielded only thousands of rockets aimed at Israeli civilians. The glory of the Oslo peace accords of the mid-1990s was also overshadowed by the suicide bombings of the Second Intifada between 2000 and 2005, which resulted in the deaths of more than 1,000 Israelis, 10 times the loss suffered by the United States in the 9/11 attacks as percentage of the population. Many experts say that Israel currently has one of the toughest right-wing governments in history, but the failed two-state solution also came from Palestine, the lack of legitimate and truly capable leader. If the Palestinians are fed up with Israeli settlement building, the Israelis are appalled with textbooks in Palestine that teach children how to attack the Jewish people. As a result, many Israelis recognize that philosopher Micah Goodman calls Catch 67, believing that the absence of an orthodox Palestinian state could present challenges for Israel, but such a Palestinian state could threaten Israel's existence. A Palestinian state run by a president who has been so afraid of his own people for the past 17 years has the potential to turn into a terrorist state overnight, like Hamas in the Gaza Strip, bringing every Israeli town within the range of rockets and rifles. Some scholars suggest the U.S. should cut aid to Israel by $3.8 billion a year to force the Jewish state to accept a solution with the Palestinians. However, today Israel is richer than before. They used to receive half of the defense budget from the U.S., but now they have enough economic and military strength to withstand the storm. Similarly, it has been suggested that Israel would be in danger if Washington stopped defending it at the United Nations. In 2022, the United Nations General Assembly and the United Nations Human Rights Council condemned Israel more often. However, stopping supporting Israel could not help Washington consolidate its dwindling influence in the Middle East. This was emphasized in early 2023 when China brokered a resumption of Iran's relations with Saudi Arabia. Some comments suggest that the United States may adopt a different approach. It is economic assistance to Palestine, building infrastructure and training schools. The philosophy of freedom and democracy of the United States is very useful if it replaces the violent ideology that is being taught to students in Palestinian schools. When all goes well, the plan related to the two-state solution will be considered, with easy steps to take first. However, some people still think all of the above scenarios are very difficult to come true. Instead of trying to understand the complex situation of the Jews, there are growing opinions against them, wanting to boycott, divest, and punish Israel. Organizations like Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and even many Middle Eastern researchers have called Israel a racist state. They argue that Israel does not grant full citizenship and equal rights to all Palestinians in the occupied territories. This would complicate Israel's relationship with the rest of the world, but ignore Israel's burgeoning relationship with China, India, the Arab world, and Africa. By refusing to place almost any responsibility of the Palestinians and has refused to offer peace and normalization of terrorist activities. Many argue that the present tragedy stems from the moral error of Israel. The United States has experienced many glorious events, but also many bitter lessons in the Middle East. In almost all events, Israel and Palestine are involved. Some argue that Israelis and Palestinians now live in a one-state model, which includes all territories controlled by Israel. After 56 years of Israeli control of more Palestinian territories, the situation is still bad and deadlocked, making the two-state solution no longer alive. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel in today's landscape. The third Palestinian Intifada seems to be emerging. Even if a new wave of violence could change both Israelis and Palestinians' calculus about the costs of their current policy, many things will be needed before the parties can negotiate a deal. It could be leaders of the two sides building mutual trust, reconciliation between the armed group Hamas and the current Palestinian government. Violent activities and Jewish settlement expansion must cease. Up to this point, there is no indication that any of the above conditions will be fulfilled. However, at least something has to change. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has often declared, Palestinians deserve peace, equality, freedom, dignity, and opportunity for development. In Israel, internal changes are trending negatively. Democracy is being corroded. Months of continuous protests and an independent judiciary are under threat. In parallel, far-right politicians appointed as ministers. All of these developments make negotiations on the two-state solution almost no longer a direction. The Democratic administration's support for Israel has dropped significantly since Joe Biden took office in 2021. Some experts believe that it is necessary to carefully consider the two-state solution and a common state of Israelis and Palestinians. The Palestinians have struggled long and hard to achieve overwhelming international recognition of their right to self-determination. Abandoning the two-state solution would be a terrible mistake. Doing so would push the Palestinians into an unending conflict with the Jews. The Jews would never agree to turn the Jewish state they worked so hard to build with their own blood into a common state in which the Palestinians are the majority. Abandoning the two-state solution would be a gift to the settlement movement and the far right in Israel. They have long worked to prevent a full-fledged Palestinian state, which will be better in the long run if Israel intends to annex the West Bank into its territory. Many opinions suggest that if the United States and the rest of the international community want to promote equal rights for Palestinians, it should carefully study the two-state option. Before a solution is drawn up, Israel should return freedom to Palestinians living in the occupied areas who can choose to return to the area administered by the Palestinian Authority. If they stay, they must have the same rights as ordinary Israelis. The international community can put pressure on Israel to accept this. For example, condemning them as a country that supports racism. The United States cuts aid, stops promoting peace between Israel and the Middle East countries, according to the Abrahamic Agreement, and even imposes limited sanctions against Israeli leaders. Many experts argue that if the United States takes the above steps, it will turn Israel from a strategically ally into an abandoned nation. American politics will react very strongly. Any president who wants to be elected must first not offend the Jewish community. Therefore, promoting equal rights for Palestinians, preferably under the two-state option, living together in a more inclusive state, promoting this equal right is very difficult and even risks leading to civil war. The Biden administration favors a two-state solution. Therefore, over the past time, they have made efforts to connect to strengthen mutual trust. Secretary of State Blinken has made important trips to both Israel and Palestine. However, the U.S. needs to do more. For example, blocking far-right ideas in the Israeli cabinet who want to create a single state or preventing the construction of new Jewish settlements. The West Bank area is currently controlled by Israel about 60%. Some opinions suggest the Biden administration should press Prime Minister Netanyahu's government to hand over this territory to the Palestinian government so that Palestinian cities and towns can develop. This is enshrined in the Oslo Accords, which Prime Minister Netanyahu's government pledged to comply with in the February 2023 Aqaba Joint Communique. The Biden administration also needs to lead an international effort to strengthen the institutions of the Palestinian state, starting with security services, the banking system, education, and healthcare. For now, the Biden administration has successfully enlisted the help of Egypt and Jordan to lay the groundwork for the resumption of Israeli-Palestinian negotiations. Israel should do the same with Saudi Arabia, which has indicated it will fully normalize relations with Israel in exchange for security guarantees and arms sales from the United States. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is lobbying U.S. President Joe Biden to meet these requests, but Mr. Biden has been advised to consider such activities only if Israel and Saudi Arabia are both willing to take steps to actively deal with the Palestinians. In this persistent conflict, Israel's national domination and supremacy also created by the Palestinians themselves. Therefore, any role Palestinians play in negotiating to bring long peace must be positive and giving up all extremist activities. They have to play the biggest role in changing the grim circumstances of their homeland over the years. The extremism of the Palestinians and their inability to organize a unified national movement play a central role in conflicts with Israel. The powerful reprisals that Israel carried out were broadcast around the world, but the global media paid little attention to the previous mass rocket launches by Hamas, which were aimed at Israeli territory. The inability to form a common vision for the country they are seeking to establish has prevented the Palestinian people from garnering support from the international community, as well as convincing many Israelis to support the retaliation of the Israeli army. Such a shared vision is needed to move from something resembling one-state apartheid to something at least akin to democracy, where equal rights can be guaranteed for all. The failure of Palestinian nationalist movements is often blamed on external factors, such as British colonial policy, Israeli aggression, and a lack of commitment from Arab states. But internal factors are believed to play a decisive role. Not only have Palestinians struggled to build a unified national movement, they have failed to consistently follow the right path while advocating violence since the people were children. The loss of legitimacy and morality makes it common to compare the Jewish rise over the past 7 decades in pre-1948 frontier Palestine to anti-colonization movements in Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, or Syria. While the leaders of these nationalist movements succeeded in rallying much of society together around clear political goals, the Palestinian elite failed to do so. Unfortunately, today's Palestinian leadership continues to be awkward, hesitant, conservative, and unwilling to reform. 75 years have passed since 1948 when the State of Israel was born, but the Palestinians have made little progress in their goals, especially in raising awareness. The world is getting closer and closer to the trend of cooperation, mutual benefit on the basis of respect. The Palestinian people are still steadfast in the path of hatred and violence. As countries move closer to democracy and respect for human rights, Palestine remains in the form of extreme dictatorship, both in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, especially the Gaza Strip controlled by Hamas. Over the past 2 decades, the Palestinian nationalist movement has largely disintegrated. The PLO, once the heart of the movement, has largely disappeared. On the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, led by President Mahmoud Abbas, is seen by many Palestinians as weak and incompetent, dependent on Israel to manage society, such as providing electricity, water, and tax. However, they still promote extremist ideas against the Jews and the Israeli government. Currently, Palestinians are divided into 4 groups with different goals and objectives. Most Palestinians in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip aspire to establish an independent Palestinian state in those territories. However, the government in these 2 places is completely different. Palestinians in refugee camps across the Middle East and Palestinians living in Israeli-controlled places want peace and equal treatment. Ultimately, East Jerusalem Palestinians who are caught between Israel and the Palestinian Authority want the city to be the future capital of a unified Palestinian state. This scenario is almost impossible. According to some experts, the first step on the road towards a better future is for the Palestinians themselves to change. They must overcome geographical and ideological differences, rallying around a single national organization. This organization must be led by a person of authority, talent, and vision. Not only offers practical solutions for Palestinians in all different situations, whether in refugee camps, migrants, the West Bank, the Gaza Strip, or in Israeli-controlled territory. To do that, Palestinians must build a foundation from history. Origins and culture are the best way to bring people together. In this case, no people do better than the Jews. The second most important thing is to have a long and wide vision. A future Palestinian state must be democratic, civilized, renounce violence, and love peace. If the Jews feel that they live next to a rich, progressive, and friendly country, there is no reason for them to oppose the existence of such a state. And this has come to an end of our program today. Thanks for your attention and see you next time.